Mill? Never mind.
Yeah, he's not here.
Not yet.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Digital Download. A couple of subjects we're going to walk through today. Going to do some introductions. I'm going to go around. So, Lenwood.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Well, I guess in some parts of the world it's not morning, but in the U.S. it's morning. I'm Linwood Ross from Celery. We're a partner of DLA Ignite, and we focused on digital culture.
Helen.
Happy Friday, everyone. Happy Friday. I'm Helen Mackenzie.
Where are you, Helen?
I'm in the Outer Hebrides of Scotland, so over the sea to Skye and a bit more that way, on the way to Iceland and the Faroe Isles and that way. So yeah, greetings to the Outer Hebrides, and challenge for me today is not to mention procurement too often, because I just love procurement.
You do. You're crazy in love with it.
I certainly am. The Beyonce of procurement. I could only wish.
Thomas.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Thomas Ross. I'm a founding partner of Social Selling HQ and a very active, proud partner of DLA Global.
Adam.
Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner and proud business partner of DLA Ignite.
Brandon.
Hi, everybody. I am Brandon Lee, and I'm instructed not to say anything the first 5 minutes that we go live every week because of one mistake, but that's okay. I am a proud partner of DLA Ignite and the founder of Funnel Amplified.
And last but not least, Kevin. You're on mute, mate.
Newbie.
Yeah.
I know.
Still can't hear you.
Can anybody, speak and sound like Kevin and talk for him?
Can't hear you.
The burrito headphones. He's going to play some tunes from the 90s.
I wish I was as handsome and as good at golf as Kevin is.
What about this?
Perfect.
Oh, wonderful.
Wow. Who knew? This is a new setup because you were on Restream before, so this is new to me, sorry. Because all the settings are different at the bottom. Okay, I'm Kevin Milne. I'm a associate with Crux, with the team Eric, Matt, and Nick Rayburn, and a pleasure to be here.
So I've got a couple of, I've had a couple of goodies this week. Nathan Gwilliam sent me a nice card, and he sent me this T-shirt.
Oh, nice.
Oh, digital monetizer.
Isn't that fantastic?
Intriguing.
Yeah. And I've also had a copy of Terry's book. I met Terry in Seattle. See, I can even pronounce it like an American. This is a new book, Blogging on Instagram. And that arrived in the post today. There you go, a couple of freebies. I don't get a big breakfast mug, but get T-shirts and books. So.
What is digital monetizer? Is that a?
It's his podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's spelled wrong, but it works across the pond. So, Thomas, you want to?
Yes.
Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Kick being the right word, I think. Well, listen, what I thought we would start with in any case today, and this is a topic we can be talking about for the rest of the year, I guess. But I wanted to talk about budgeting with respect to 2022. We're right at the beginning, and many companies are well into the process of budgeting for 2022. And there's so many different things that we can talk about when it comes to that. Gartner had put out some stats as they do with respect to the percentage of budgeting dollars for marketing And the fact that they've dropped from a high of 11 and the average of 12 over many years, now down to 6.4, I believe, or 6 something as of last year. So budgeting dollars are either being reallocated or not put in place at all. So companies are really looking at where they need to make their investments. And I think that, and I'll say something a little bit controversial, and maybe that'll get everybody kind of going, because I don't want to get in a huge spiel. I want us to have a good discussion on this. I think that companies have relied on a traditional org chart that is just as outdated as some of their current marketing and sales methodologies. And therefore, that org chart needs just as much of a shake, if not a complete overhaul, as does everything else. And I think the title CMO and even CSO are long overdue for replacement. And both those roles, such as they are in most companies, I don't think exist anymore or shouldn't. And I think they need to be changed. And I think the title CRO or CCO or something of that kind with a team that's associated is a much better path, more cost efficient, and absolutely more in tune with the reality today, which is customers. It's not about our company hierarchy and org chart. It's about customers. And we're no longer in touch with our customers. And I think the flatter the organization, the more in tune it is with its customers. The way I would rate the hiring of formerly what might have been called a CMO or a CSO, just as we do with salespeople, and we talk about this a lot, how connected are they in their networks with the customers that we're going to be dealing with if I hire this individual? Are they connected at all? I'm sorry, but I look at so many CMO profiles. Connected is definitely not the word. And that is true of many CSOs as well. So that's not to say all of them by any stretch, because there are some that do a great job. But the fact is, many of them do not. So I think CMOs and CSOs should be eradicated. What say you?
Helen,
can I start? Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I was just going to chip in and say, I think you could be right there in terms of the transition away from traditional structures. One of the things that I've seen on the spend side is the change from a structure with lots of functions to, in a sense of a chief in officer. So that's the person that gets all the money in, the revenue side, and then the chief out officer, which is the spend side, and CPOs, chief procurement officers, transitioning to be that lead role for all the spend in the organization, and that includes salaries and wages for the employees. So I think there does seem to be a transition away from traditional structures, and obviously on the getting the money inside, on the customer side, on the revenue side, that's going to be really interesting for sales and marketing. The other thing that I've seen is a lot more performance management, performance indicators, KPIs around marketing and sales, but probably marketing more than sales, where marketing spend is now being looked at in terms of ROI, and this brand awareness metric that may have been that may have been used in the past, which was fantastic for people who were suppliers to help people raise the awareness of their brand, through advertising, marketing, podcasts, conferences, and so on. I think there's a lot more management around, what are we getting for the money we're spending on the marketing side, and so that's putting people under pressure to deliver, and perhaps the old methods aren't quite as they should be.
I work for an organization, Thomas, where what we did with the marketing plan was that we went to PowerPoint, which is where the marketing plan was, and we deleted 2021 and put in 2022 and then sent it out.
I mean, you joke when you say that, but actually that's true.
I'm not joking. It was I watched it happening.
I can vouch
Using
for
the Control and F and the replace all, was it? You just had a shortcut key.
Yeah,
Well-
I think the reality with this is that that marketers and sales leaders, and in fact everybody in a corporate environment to a greater or lesser extent, has come through the ranks and has had 5, 10, 20, 30 years of experience of dealing with issues, increasing revenue, increasing awareness, selling more product, with a particular set of tools that have been at their disposal. And I don't know, maybe 4, 5 years ago, those tools stopped working, or we saw a very significant decline in the effectiveness of those tools. And for 2 years, people thought this was a momentary blip. And then they thought that this is a longer blip, but things will still bounce back. You know, my email list that I have spent so many years developing, which now got 10,000 people on it. I used to get 1,000 responses and click-throughs, and then I got 500, and then I got 200, and then I got 50. And actually, when things get back to normal, they'll go back up to 500 or 1,000 responses. And I think,
or what they'll do is that they'll, as we know people do, is that they'll say, "Oh, we'll replace this email marketing tool with this email marketing tool," because it's obviously the tool that's at fault, not the fact that
it's not fit for purpose anymore.
Yes.
Yeah, and I think that what we see is that the leaders of the different divisions within an organization are paralyzed by the fact that they don't know what they need to do. And when they're reporting to the CEO and they say, we need to throw away this old methodology that we have been using for 10 years, because for 4 years it hasn't been working, they're concerned that what will come back from the CEO is, so why has it taken you 4 years to determine that this way of doing things hasn't worked anymore? You're fired. So actually people have so much invested. And oddly, Tim, I think Kevin shared with us the Seth Godin thing that I put it on my LinkedIn profile today. I did this course that Tim had said, you must do this course. It's really interesting, around sunk costs in your thinking and holding on to those chips. So I've got my diploma from the Chartered Institute of Marketing or the Marketing Society, whatever it is, and I'm an expert marketer, and I've spent so long investing in this and learning the ways of marketing. I can't stand up and say none of this stuff works anymore, because that invalidates me and my 20 years of experience. And I think that we've got a situation now where obviously people know these things don't work. You can't just send out emails because they themselves don't open emails that come in from people. You can't just cold call people because they themselves don't answer the phone. And yet they still go into work and commission those things that they know don't work from their own behavior, because they're afraid to say, actually, the king's naked. We need to do something entirely different.
I think what we're seeing is really, you know, there are multiple levels to it, but I think the first thing is that the cultures of the organizations have also not kept up with the why behind all of that is happening. So, you know, we can say that behaviors are changing, but people can't figure out what to do about that, or these executives can't figure out what to do about the behavior change because they still have not addressed why behavior is changing. They have no idea. And it's a lack of focus on digital technologies and the digital technologies and their impact on buyer behaviors. So once you go all the way back to the source, very basic, cause and effect, then you can start to say, well, oh, there's a very good reason why things are changing now, right? Email marketing is a pretty old technology.
30 years old.
That's a pretty old technology. So anyway, so that's one issue. The other issue, and what we see happening in organizations that have been able to adapt, not all organizations have been slow to adapt, is they're focused on these cultural issues. For example, that fixed versus growth mindset, that person that says, you know, I all of these things that are a part of me, they're unchanging. If these don't work anymore, I'm stuck. So, companies that are focusing on changing their mindset, growth mindset, so that their people recognize that they have the ability to learn new things, to adapt, and to apply what's necessary for the time. Those companies are finding their way. They're finding their way.
I wrote a little piece about this and published it earlier today, and I think that a lot of the problem here is that the large consultancies, the place or the people that organizations look to for guidance on this, state the obvious, and they're effectively going into a town, walking up to a tourist and asking for directions somewhere. So 27% of digital marketers say they will be spending more on email marketing in 2022 than they did in 2021. But what they know is that the email marketing isn't working. So simply investing more money in something that doesn't work is not the right solution. And the big consultancies, who shall remain nameless, but the big consultancies report this. They do huge surveys of hundreds or thousands of people, and they produce these figures which really restate a problem that is blindingly obvious to anybody that opens their eyes, which is the ways that we used to generate revenue don't work anymore. And they restate this, so everybody is telling us that this doesn't work. But it's your job, Mr. Big Consultancy, it's your job to give people a signpost for how they can get out of this situation. Simply restating that you've got no revenue. Well, I know that. I'm looking at my pipeline. There's nothing coming in. You don't need to tell me that. And you don't need to tell me that that's a problem that everybody's facing. What you need to tell me is what I can do. Not the granular detail of how I get out of this, because that's what you charge for. But to say to me, okay, this is the growth area. This is how people are now behaving. And you have to address this with what you do. And that's simply not being said, is it?
No.
Do you think? Oh, sorry. Carry on.
No, I just said there's a series of blogs in that, Adam. That was spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think the pandemic's accelerated some of that? I don't know, need for change,
Accelerated
Adam.
Confusion.
It has. Of course, it has.
It's more about, I don't know, a lot more people on social, for instance, with theoretically the time to read some of the emails that are coming in, but still pressing delete. Has it sort of brought into focus? Because I think if I think about myself, I don't know, 2 years ago, and my inbox full of content where the headlines made me think it might be interesting if I opened the email. At that point, I was like, well, if only I could perhaps listen to it on my commute, or if only I could carve out a bit of time to read these things. But, without commutes and with work from home and, potentially the ability to read these, I'm still pressing delete. And the headlines of, I don't know, imaginative about how they're trying to pull me in. So
I think that people who struggled with the volume of content and productivity before the pandemic are struggling even more now. People that are struggling with burnout, they're struggling with, they're struggling even more now. So one of the things that you have to do in this digital world is turn up your no, meaning, no, I'm not going to have this phone on for the next 2 hours. No, I'm not going to read these emails because I just don't have time to read all these emails. You have to get really, vicious with it, because if you keep saying yes to everyone who interrupts you for your time, you will get absolutely nothing done. So you have to be very focused on whatever your goals are. Well, let me go back. You have to know what your goals are, where you're going. And then you have to be really just ferocious in terms of how you get there. And that's actually a function of what Jan pointed to, acceleration of business. Everything's just moving faster. There's so much more.
But you know, at the end of the day, if the question is where do I put my dollars for 2022, this is all well and good and it's fuzzy, but it's not particularly helpful. At the end of the day, where do I put my dollars? So I've got X amount of budget, maybe it's 6%.
Where are you going to place your bets?
Where am I putting my dollars? Yeah, what am I doing? Am I shaking up my organization? How do I get my team? And culture is a big part of it, Linwood. I don't mean to discount that. But how do I get my team to properly focus on the customer? They're not connected to the customer. So what am I going to do? Where am I going to put my dollars?
Well, Thomas, I think that you actually have to do all of those things. You have to address your culture. Let me finish. You have to address your culture. You have to address your organization and your revenue all at the same time. Okay.
Well, I think you need to step back though, and you need to say, how do people behave? So we live in a world where, as you said, Lenwood, you've got this tsunami of content coming towards you, and you have to know where you're going to place your bets. So I can tell you how I decide which things I'm going to read. I'm going to read something because you, Lenwood, flag it to me and say this is really good. Mm-hmm. Or you, Brandon, say this is really good. Or you, Kevin, or you, Thomas, or Helen, or Tim, or whoever.
And is it because you trust? And is it because you trust those people?
Exactly, because I know that outside of my business and network, i.e., you guys, there are loads of other people that I know and trust. And when those people say to me, "This is worth reading," I'm much more likely to read it. So we each have our trusted network. Now, further to your point, Thomas, where you place your bets is on developing a methodology which enables you to make sure that your content is the content that is recommended by people into their networks, i.e. social. So whether or not we're talking about social being social, Instagram, Facebook, whether we're talking about it being business social, Twitter, LinkedIn, whether we're talking about it being internal social, Slack or Teams, it's absolutely about saying, I'm going to crowdsource where I should spend that 1 hour a day that I'm going to spend researching and learning things by not going out there. And further to the Edelman idea of there's this huge uplift in the amount of substandard and mediocre thought leadership. There's no thought leadership out there. I mean, there is, but thought leadership is not, I've got something to say, so I'm going to say it. Thought leadership is leading a field, introducing a new idea which is of value to people. That's thought leadership. And what I want is the report that Kevin shared yesterday, or the reports that you share, or the reports that you share, because actually I know that you guys have read it. You thought, this is valuable. I will introduce this to my network. Whether that's this network, your internal network, or your external network, doesn't matter. And that's how people achieve breakthrough in 2021. And to invest stuff in I'll just amplify my message, it just becomes more wallpaper stuck on top of other wallpaper, doesn't it?
I think Adam, that is so spot on. I think we as a culture, a global business culture, have conditioned people to ignore most of what we say. And I wrote a piece. It became a big PDF on the circle of trust. That went into everything that you just said. And I think it's because, marketers spent a lot of time. I mean, you can see all this stuff out there of, what's the right subject line to increase your open rates and all this stuff. I believe they focused on all the wrong things. They're focused on open rates, but they're not focused on substance or actually being a thought leader, right? It was like, how do I get people to open this? Because they were judged on open rates.
Brandon, I totally agree. Sorry, it's a multi-billion dollar industry in marketing manipulation.
Yeah,
it's not an industry; it's a Ponzi scheme.
Right. And what it's done is conditioned buyers to ignore that stuff.
Yeah,
it's what we talk about all the time. Mm-hmm. Nobody listens to your brochure information because, of course, you're going to say you're awesome and great and wonderful and all that. I'm going to go talk to my people that I trust to get the real answer. and that's where they go. And so when companies start, it's really hard because companies don't want to hear that, right? What they want to hear is that their systems are working, buyers are acting differently. Let's tweak a few things. Let's put more butts in seats so that we can have more phone calls and have more emails going out, increase the ad budget, all of those things, because everything we just said, it's going to work. My question is always, what does it take? Now, I've been, more on a smaller end business owner for the last 25 years, and I am innovative and I'm willing to take risk. And so we've adapted in my companies. We've always moved very quickly. I don't know what it's going to take as we talk about the big analyst companies and the consulting firms saying this, and that, all the same stuff. How do companies get the courage and then the ability to move when there are these huge, luxury cruise lines that can't just turn the wheel and make a turn? They need miles before they make that turn. So I think we're leading that with the stuff that we talk about, and we're pushing it along. But how do we do it? How do we do more? How do we do better? How do we get customers?
Believe it or not, we have to make it easier.
That's that's bang on what Brandon just said there. There's a huge, I know there's an opportunity. You guys know it, hence you walked away from your role 6 years ago to turn the screw on what you've seen as more user-friendly an approach to businesses. Now, I had a call at the start of the week with a guy asking me about social based on what he's seen from my profile. He didn't understand it, what I was doing from what I was doing previously, because we knew each other for a while. So we had that call, which went further. He's in a company that does SaaS in a big space in digital twinning, governed by Norway, in a bigger firm. He's done the gap selling. He's done the Challenger, Keenan stuff. He's done the Miller Hyman, and he's never seen or heard of anything that I discuss with him in terms of this particular landscape and how we approach in B2B.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense that he wouldn't have.
And he bought right, exactly, and that's the link. Not enough people are looking up to, or have the chance to look up and see what else is going on. So when he goes back to marketing in Norway and tries to get championing in, they're saying, "Oh, we're hiring 2 social media people." He says, "Well, you're just going to throw the same stuff we've already seen, though. I've seen something totally different here that would help me and my team." So there's a big disconnect still, back to marketing, back to revenue and sales people who just want to keep chucking stuff at new things and think they'll fix it.
Yeah.
But unless they see something that's going to challenge the whole situation and how we approach as humans to leading them into us instead of pushing, it's going to be that way.
Isn't that back to the word that Lenwood said at the beginning, which was culture?
Yes.
Because, what we see when we talk to larger businesses is that there is a culture of, you're on the front line, Thomas, you're the salesman, therefore you need to behave this way to generate more sales. Tim's your manager, therefore he tells you what you need to do. I'm Tim's manager, therefore I tell him what to do. I don't need to change, I just need to tell Tim to tell you what you need to do. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with this world is that everybody is exposed. So this is not like the old days where the only route into the business was via the website or via the telephone. Now everybody can see everybody that operates within the organization, and there needs to be a culture of every single individual taking ownership for where the business goes. So this is not the buck stops there or there. This is the buck stops here. I am responsible for behaving in this way, and it's only if everybody behaves in this way that we prosper as an organization.
Yeah, I would take that one step further. Because I love that. I would use the sports analogy. After a while, and it doesn't take long in sports, it seems to take a heck of a lot longer in business. After a while, we fire the damn coach, right? And I think there are a lot of CEOs, and I'm just going to say it, that need to be fired. They need to be replaced, because if they don't lead, the team will not follow. It's that simple. And they are not leading.
Yeah, and extend that a little, Thomas, with the sports analogy. We also trade players that aren't producing or bench them.
Yes.
Right? And we're slow to do that because the fear is, we're not going to find replacements. Adam, to give a story, a real life story to what you were saying. I've been in conversations with a company that salesperson adopts social selling. knocks it out of the park. At the end of a year of using it, becomes, top salesperson. CRO gets excited and goes, "What did you do?" Explains it. Great. We need to do this and adopt this for everybody. And then the conversation gets pushed to SVP of marketing or, demand gen. And the whole conversation dies and goes nowhere because person, right? The sales functionality of social gets thrown into the marketer's hands and dies because they're the brand police. They're the ones that, when they look at social selling solutions, they go, "I'm not going to let anybody else write stuff. What if they don't use the right logo?" And it's just like, we are focused on the wrong things. You're muting your sales team, right? You're putting a big piece of duct tape over their mouth, putting them in rooms with ideal customers, telling them to sell, and they got duct tape on their mouth.
And that's the bit of marketing don't get and they'll never get. It's the process to get from A to B. And amongst the other good stuff that the salesperson's doing as we coach them to do well. They'll never get that because they'll never see it.
And I think what Patrick said on there.
Yeah, here's one about what are your thoughts about speaking more like and to CFOs, CEOs rather than sellers? Yeah, so I think the interesting thing is that if you adopt social across an organization, it impacts and helps sales and marketing and procurement and human resources and hiring and employee engagement and customer engagement and visibility in the marketplace and trusted advisor status. And the problem is, if you're not talking to somebody that's responsible ultimately for all of these things, they don't care. Sales are only interested in revenue. Marketing are only interested in views and clicks. Human resources are only interested in hiring. Ultimately, what we need is to be having these conversations at board level, where the people sitting around the table are responsible for every single one of these business functions and every single one of these outcomes.
Yeah, I mean, that's a result of a siloed culture. That's, it just goes back to the culture. The CEO has to, and maybe Brandon, I don't know who said we need to fire the CEOs. I think it was Thomas. I mean, the CEOs, they need to get on the ball about changing the culture, changing, they're supposed to be looking at changing the business model, right? Moving to digital first. I mean, if you're at your organization and you're not thinking about how you transform your business to compete in a digital first world, you're already behind.
Way behind.
I think we get lost in that word though. I hear that word every day. I use that word every day. Digital.
Which one?
Digital.
Yeah.
Digital. Because I think
email.
People hear that word, they don't know what the hell it means.
Yeah.
Right. And then they get lost. And then because they don't know what it means, they put it aside and they go back to whatever.
And we just hire somebody who's says they're good on social media, and that's job done. Tick.
Yeah.
Well, they've got a beard, Tim, so they must be all right.
And they got a beard. Yeah. We know someone who
about?
hired someone who thought they were good at social media because they had a beard.
But what is digital about, guys?
No
What
hope
is
for me
digital
then.
really about?
Digital is about the digital technologies. It's about adopting.
No, it's not.
Sure,
No,
it is.
it's not.
It's not. Digital's not about cloud. It's not about mobile. It's not about social.
No, it's not about that, because the next thing is going to come
that.
along and disrupt that. Digital is simply the vehicle today to be in touch with your customers whose behavior has radically changed and don't buy in the same way. Digital is the way and the methodology we can use to better communicate with our customers in whatever way you want to do that, as Adam so aptly put forward a little while ago. Digital is just a vehicle. Tomorrow, the vehicle may look different. It may have a different name. I don't care. But at the end of the day, it's about how we do or don't communicate with our customers. And if you don't communicate with your customers today through digital, then you've lost. And your competitor will figure that out, use digital in the way that they can more appropriately and effectively deal with their customers, and you lose.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to have quibble about it, but digital is more than just that.
It is,
I'll
but
leave it at that. I'll
I,
leave it at that. I mean,
Quibble away,
that's
guys.
the front part of digital, but it's not how we're using data. That's
no,
part of digital.
Linwood, I agree. I don't disagree. It's just that we get lost in all that back end, what it really
Actually,
is.
I disagree. I think that it's a failure to understand that how you are addressing digital technologies in each of those areas, that is the problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing that you need, in other words, if you're not implementing a cloud infrastructure, it's going to be pretty hard for you to use social media in the way that you need to use it. And it's going to be hard for you to overcome the silos and implement the kind of business transformation program that DLA Ignite would advocate if you're not using cloud technologies.
Agreed. But if you didn't understand what digital was and how it applies to your customers in the first place, that conversation doesn't happen, buddy.
No, but what I'm saying is they don't even understand that social media is a digital technology.
Exactly. You're making my point.
No, I'm not. What I'm saying is people have to understand that each of these technologies is impacting their business. And social media is a very significant digital technology that's impacting their
and I think that social media as a digital technology is probably a really hard one for people to get their heads around. You know, if it's cloud technology, you know, that's a quite a straightforward concept to get your head around. Whereas the social media digital element of sales and marketing is a harder way of.
I shared a slide. It was either last weekend or the weekend before that a colleague of Adam and I, Thomas Power, created back in 2017, which basically shows digital and social.
Mm-hmm.
And digital, the definition, and you may not agree, but the people who commented on the post, and it's still on my LinkedIn profile, digital generally is seen as being the hard elements, so IT infrastructure, whereas social generally is the people and the process. But tell you what. Time out, segue. We've got Helen on here today, and I wanted to bring Helen on because she is a procurement expert. So we talk a lot about sales and marketing, but what we're starting to see is the transformation taking place in procurement. So this is where people are buying things. So rather than selling things, it's the converse side to it. Helen, do you want to, social procurement? Do you want to just explain to the audience and that what that is?
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's sort of flipping it onto the other side of the organisation, isn't it? We've talked a lot there about getting sales and getting money in, and then this is flipping it to the digital, to the social side of spending money, of relationships.
So
with
why
suppliers.
as a chief purchasing officer, a CPO, would I want to put my head above the parapet on LinkedIn because I'm just going to get shed loads of shitty little emails and connection requests saying buy my product because it's great? Why would I do that?
Well, because there's more. It's not just CPOs; it's everybody in a procurement team, because there's a lot of value from getting out there and being connected. One of the things we do in procurement is we take time to understand the market for the things that we're buying. Who are the main suppliers? What's going on in the market? Where's the innovation? Are there cost pressures around some of the stuff that we're buying? And you can go to a company that does analysis of metrics like inflation, but you can also try and get out there and see what people are talking about and see what the dynamics are. And that's where social comes in. Step one, it's about just understanding what's going on. And these days, we're not all about price. Obviously, we're trying to get the best deal for our organisations that we possibly can from the suppliers that we buy from. But there's also other dynamics around that. And it plays to the point Lenwood made about culture, you know, the way we do things around here, the types of people that we have business relationships with. And again, social is a good way to sort of dig in and see, you know, what are the people like that work at a potential supplier that we might want to buy from? You know, are they people that share our values? That, I mean, I was going to come in on that point around culture, because I think that alignment of culture, particularly for suppliers, you know, buyers and suppliers, where the relationship makes a difference, you know, is key. So I might be buying something off you. It might not be a huge bit of my business, but if the thing I buy off you goes wrong, you know, I can't, cloud technology, so cloud storage, I might buy that off you. If I can't access it or the servers go down, you know, I'm not doing business. So, you know, are you a supplier who...
Is that therefore what you're saying is that buyers are going online and they're checking people out within a company that they're looking to buy from to see what the culture's like within that organization?
Well, I'm saying this is the idea behind social procurement, that as we move on, as technology takes the sort of sausage machine part of buying out of it, that you've got marketplaces, that you've got e-sourcing platforms, all the things we used to do, you know, where we used to put tender documents in envelopes and send them out to people, or do checks manually for things that technology is just telling us about risk or about that. We've got time on our hands now. You know, what we're going to do with that, how we in procurement going to add value? Well, it's about seeking out suppliers that are going to make a difference to the bottom line with us, either by you know, working with us to innovate, or by offering a different way of thinking about something that we hadn't thought that we can bring into the business, or just by being great business partners that, I don't know, when a global pandemic strikes, are going to work with us to make sure that we've seen
many situations, haven't we, where in over the last 24 months where we probably got our raw materials or got our goods from, say, South Korea. And then what happens is that they get hit by a COVID and the whole place has to shut down. So our raw materials and our finished goods basically can't come from there. So, you know, we've got a situation where there isn't enough chips being built. So here in the UK, it's cheaper to buy a second-hand car than it is to buy, it's cheaper to buy a new car than it is to buy a second-hand car. Because if you go to buy a new car, there isn't any chips, so you can't buy them. So what we've got,
yeah, but I mean, it's even things, Tim, like services. So, you know, if you've outsourced things like your customer contact center to somewhere else, you know, if you've got, and you know, there was some really great stories about during the pandemic about some of the places based in India where great buyer supplier relationships meant you're working with that supplier, they're people that share your values to carry on, that they're well organized, they've made contingency plans. Now, you know, some of that you would do through a sourcing process, but some of that we can start to do through social, through connections between people. It's not all CEOs and CEOs, it's about a category manager talking to somebody in a company about what they do and thinking it through.
If you take Mario Bergman in Switzerland, who set himself up, he's a category manager.
Yeah.
And basically what he's doing is that he's created the hashtag We Are Buying.
Yeah.
And so what he's saying that social selling is now, all the salesperson has to do is go onto LinkedIn, search on for the hashtag We Are Buying, see if the buyers therefore are selling or buying what they want to sell, and sell it to them.
Yeah, you can do it like that. Absolutely. That's at the transactional end.
Obviously,
now, the idea...
it could be at the transaction end, but you could do that whether you're selling a $100,000 ERP system. You could put a request out there.
Yeah. Yeah. I think also it's about narrowing it down, you know, back to the conversation about, I don't know, this sort of scattergun approach to marketing and sales, you know, that I then narrow it down because I need to tell everybody that we talked about it yesterday, Brandon, about, I need to send 1,000 emails so that one responds. Social can narrow it down. So, if I'm a supplier of the equipment that Mario's wanting to buy, I can look at his profile. He is buying. Is he in a place I can actually get it to? Is the company he works for the right use of the thing I've got to sell? There's quite a lot I can do as a salesperson before I approach him. So when I approach him, I actually know what he's, from social, know what he's after, know the type of company it is. Perhaps he's put some posts on about ethical sourcing, or they've got carbon targets for their company. So I need to think, well, does the way we do this, is that going to align with the company's values? There's a lot of stuff I can do, even though he's saying he's buying before I go. So actually the matchmaking between buyer and supplier in that transactional sense works a lot better because a seller's been able to do that. Now, obviously, you'll still get ones that are just going to sell you something as soon as you collect, but I think there's a potential there to.
But in this world of social
process,
selling, where what we're doing is that we're providing insight. So if you think about what a buyer does, a buyer basically has to get the best quality at the lowest price. And we're in a situation where our suppliers are probably not. We don't know whether our suppliers can supply because we don't know what's going to happen. Because in the US there's a container shortage. They've got ships basically in a big queue in Florida because they can't. There's not enough place to get in. There's all kinds of things that are hitting us from a global supply chain perspective. So as a business, we have this disruption going on. That we don't know, we're not in control of. So what we need to do is we need to have suppliers in our back pockets ready to be able for us to be able to switch quickly. And social is a great place for us to actually do that. Now, if we look at the way that the social selling works, social selling is that salespeople are coming to the marketplace, building connections, and they're sharing insight. So rather than saying buy my product because it's great, and then you have 44,000 salespeople who look exactly the same, as we had with one customer this week. We have one person who looks completely different. So from a buying perspective, it actually makes the whole process easier and more efficient. Would you agree? Question.
Well, yes, and I think also, around having that extended network ready for action, it is great. These are people that you've had conversations. This is a theory. These are people that you've had conversations with before. You've got a bit of a feel for what their organisation's good at and what it's not. But also that if you want to issue a clarion call, help. So my supplier's stuck in Florida. My suppliers are stuck in Kenya. And we saw this with PPE in a sense. We saw this with the PPE supply chain, was that a lot of people on both sides, I've repurposed my plant and I've got hand wash. Does anybody want it? On the other side, does anybody have any gloves? So I think, in extremis you've seen it, but I think that as that becomes business as usual, as a category manager, if I've got this network, then when I stick my hashtag on, I'm buying, I've got that pool of suppliers already. Now, I suppose in the olden days, people would go to conferences, they'd have their Rolodexes, they'd sort of do the networking there. The potential for that network to be more extensive, but also just a little bit more, I don't know, less linear and less narrow. So I've got some sort of left field suppliers on there that are sort of at the edge of it, or that might know somebody that knows somebody. There's that bit as well, isn't it? There. I mean, I've done a lot of that in my time where somebody's been looking for something and I'm like, well, obviously I don't supply it, but I know somebody who does, and I've done the matchmaking on through LinkedIn primarily to get people on. So you've sort of got that extended side as well for people, and it is about you talk about quality and price, but there is the expectation now in procurement that people are going to add value, that they're going to add value in terms of bringing new ideas to the business. Where we're going to get that? Socials are great. Back to, reports that people share that I'm going to look at, that people have curated for me rather than the emails. They're going to get it from social. That they're going to, the suppliers that they're going to recommend that the organisation buys from are aligned with the values. That's again a sort of value add thing that's not just about the quality and the price, although they're still there. There's that other bit as well that's there's the real potential. So I personally don't necessarily think that social procurement's going to completely replace everything that we do, but I think it's that value add bit. When human beings are left in procurement, when the digital does all the rest of it, what are we doing? We're adding value because of the relationships we've got with people, suppliers, primarily in our networks.
Thank you.
What?
Interesting.
Kevin,
Tim,
do you want to talk about the Edelman?
I can glaze around that
The last 10
beautiful
minutes.
article. Yes. Yeah, I shared it on the Slack channel, and to me, it was a beautiful 35 slide or so exercise of what we've been preaching for the last, well, you guys have been preaching much longer, but in terms of the content we all write as a team, it was very, it resonated a lot in how we spoke and wrote and what they were trying to say. So yeah,
So what's the high level thing that you took away from it, Kevin?
High level, this was across 3,500 global business executives. A study was done by Edelman and LinkedIn. High level, more thought leadership content that allows B2B purchasing to look at you in that sense and make that purchase based on what they see and who they trust, who's writing these pieces. Insights into business sectors and add value, as Adam pointed out, is huge. And new businesses, especially looking to make their mark on new territory, this is key for them because, again, that builds trust quickly and they can build a community in a sense around product and service and who they are as people. But the one thing I wanted to tie it back to, we talked about spraying a lot of content out there and not so much the stuff that resonates to the people looking in. So Tim touched on it there about the chip shortage. That was a very high report done by the MPS sector just this week by Luella Fernandez at CoCirc. Now that's an industry I'm familiar with, as well as logistics. So again, go back to the thought leadership piece. Instead of selling me or pitching me or pushing content on your new product and service in these spaces, why not tell me that there's demands on this particular subject? Why not tell me that the shipping port at Guangdong's having major challenges with this and US doesn't have the scale to deliver this solution to you? Why not tell me that in that space better than telling me the other stuff that I really don't need to see right now? I need to see what's going on in that industry that you're meant to be the person that I'm meant to trust to lean on.
So I've got an open question for everybody because everyone has gone quiet. What do you think is thought leadership? Because I don't see any on LinkedIn. I see people regurgitating same old crap.
Mm-hmm.
I'm interested in what you think.
It's something that's quite narrow, Tim. I mean, I looked at the slide in the report where I put OMG on it, which was, buyers say if a piece of thought leadership does not pique their interest within the first minute, they'll move on. 55% said that. And they file it away and never actually read it.
I mean, as soon as you say it's a 2,000 word white paper, you ignore it.
Yeah, but is it back to this narrowing down, back to your thing about the port, Kevin? That's a really narrow piece of insight. And I think people are frightened to narrow it down and say, well, if I say that and Helen's not interested, that's rubbish. Whereas if you say that and Adam's absolutely delighted, he opens your report, he reads it, he engages with you, and he becomes a customer, that's a win. But I think people are really frightened or reluctant or customer practices to sort of make it this big general thing of, that isn't actually. Because thought leadership's quite narrow, isn't it? You're talking about consultancy stuff. It's quite narrow, isn't it?
Isn't the challenge just that simply because I have something to say, that doesn't make me a thought leader? And I think that we have created a Frankenstein by everybody thinking that because they have a viewpoint that they want to share with people, that makes them a thought leader. You know, you have to innovate, you have to bring something fresh, you have to bring not just a problem but a solution. That's thought leadership. Okay, if you are in this situation, this is why you're in this situation, this is how you solve this particular challenge that you're facing. That's thought leadership. And I think that the challenge that we often see is that people say, well, I don't agree with whatever it is. I don't agree with that. I think this is the way. That's not thought leadership. That's just an argument.
And I think they moved on in the slides to try and frame it, not just about, as Tim pointed out, in maybe boring stats or facts or a white paper or a case study in that space, but tell a story. Again, as you said, Adam, tell me what's happening. Tell me what you're going to do about it and how you've proved it here. And tell it in that story format and put a bit of humor in there if you can to allow them to be inclined that way to read more, I guess, than just words on a bit of paper. You know?
Yeah, one of the third key learning says earning trust and credibility with decision makers requires strong thought leadership, especially if you are not established market leader. Now, I'm telling you the bleeding obvious. One of our clients said to us that throwing content at strangers doesn't work anymore. So, and I totally agree with them. And so what happens is that people think that thought leadership is, in effect, what I'm going to tell you is about my company and my products. I'm really excited about it because it pays my mortgage. You're not. But thought leadership is I'm going to tell you about these things, throw it at a bunch of strangers, and then that's my KPI done.
I think that LinkedIn has, and I mentioned this on Adam's post, that LinkedIn actually has a vested interest in expanding the idea of thought leadership, not the technical definition of thought leadership, but the idea of thought leadership. And that is actually, I think, intentional to break through to people who might not necessarily be thought leaders in the technical sense, strictest technical sense of the word, but they do have something to contribute. They do have a viewpoint that might offer insight to someone who has less experience or maybe new to an industry, and that it's useful for everyone to get those folks engaged in the conversation on LinkedIn. And I am in favor of that. There is a group of people who will tend to think that their thoughts are really important thoughts and should be shared with everyone. But the majority of people are actually insecure about the things that they are thinking. And they're insecure about, their experience. They're insecure about, what they might have to contribute. And they're insecure about what technically is thought leadership. And LinkedIn would like to see, and I think it's a good thing, that what is thought leadership be made a little bit more informal so that people will use their platform to share their viewpoint, which may contain some leading thoughts on the platform.
I think LinkedIn's got a vested interest in everything. They spread themselves very thin. They talk about the best ways to cold calling and the best ways to send a cold email. So
yes,
as well, yeah.
Simultaneously. Yeah.
But I'm all for that. Now, Lenwood, that piece would be much better for me to read and others to read in that space. Yeah.
They're trying to.
I can't agree. I can't agree with that. I think that it's really important that people are. You're right, Lemma. There are people lacking in confidence and they feel insecure about sharing stuff. I think that there's a big difference between me sharing who I am, so a personal post about me with the family or me playing the guitar or whatever it may be that enables people to get to know me. That's great. The problem is that we have a situation in the world across all media channels, not just LinkedIn or social, that people believe that their parachute and their safety net is, well, that's your opinion. My opinion is different. I'm entitled to my opinion. No, you're entitled to your opinion if it's a subjective viewpoint. I think yellow is a better color than red. I'm entitled to hold that opinion. I'm not entitled to hold an opinion which is factually incorrect, because it's not an opinion. It's just wrong. And the problem with dressing up people sharing ideas which are poorly conceived or incorrect is that it helps people who are looking for advice and guidance to make the wrong decision. So when you go online and you consume thought leadership that says the solution to your marketing and sales woes is to send more emails through a more advanced marketing automation tool, people lap that up, they buy the tool and they send more emails. And in fact, what happens is they don't cure the problem, they compound the problem. So
we had someone this week, a thought leader, who put a meme out saying that articles on LinkedIn were rubbish, and people were making people actually may put comments saying that they were making business decisions to stop writing articles on LinkedIn because of this meme. And
that meme is factually incorrect. But what happens is if you publish a post rather than an article, it may well get more engagement, but it doesn't get more visibility. And to assume that the corollary from that meme is that valueless content is articles is absolutely, could not be further from the truth. And the problem is that when you give people a platform to share their ideas, if I am inexperienced and I listen to Helen say one thing and Tim say something, and the two things are different, if I'm inexperienced or ignorant about that topic, I'm not able to judge who is correct and who is wrong. And we see this with the science of COVID. We see this with so many things that are going on in the world at the moment, where somebody is allowed to hold a view which is contrary to all the science simply because that's my view and I'm entitled to it. I'm sorry, you're not, if you're sharing it and educating, and I use the word very clearly in inverted commas, you're educating people with wrong information. And the problem here is that businesses the world over are in crisis at the moment. You know, they have, for the last 2 years, they have bled their pipelines dry. They have no future anymore, a lot of these organizations. And they're scrabbling around for a parachute and a solution to these problems. And what they're being provided with is not a parachute. They're being provided with a backpack with a lunch and a picnic blanket in it. And they're leaping out of the aeroplane hoping that they're going to be all right. And it's only on the way down that they realize, oh dear, you know, well, we're all right so far. You know, the business hasn't crashed yet. Well, it will. Because the fundamental challenges and framework inside which the organization operates simply isn't the same as it was.
And there's a difference between social procurement. Let's pick that, which is an idea that people are discussing of a new way of doing procurement, and you know what, and a technique. I don't know, e-sourcing, where there's data behind it to prove that it does something. And, you know, once people have done social procurement for a while, there'll be data. And I think that's, you know, that back to what you're saying about what works and what doesn't. You know, you can leap out of your aeroplane in the leap of faith that you're trying to disrupt your industry and you're an early mover. That's one thing. But if you're not an early mover and you're adopting something because you think it works, surely you know, I wouldn't procure something without some data that it worked, that it was a solution.
Yeah, but the problem is, isn't it?
People are doing that, aren't they? Leaps of faith.
Yeah, but people say, and you know, we see it a lot away from the business world. We see it a lot where people say, well, you need to do your own research. Yeah, but the problem is that going onto Google, reading content that validates what you think the problem is, that's not doing research. And this is the mistake that people have made. They've forgotten how to undertake critical thinking these days.
Forgotten?
Yeah, good point, Lenny. No, but you know, the problem is that people go online, they read 4 articles, all the articles say the same things, and they think, okay, well, that must be true. And actually, it isn't true. And this is the problem with dressing up opinion as thought leadership. You know, I genuinely believe that our view of the world is the correct one, because for 6 years we've been testing it. And we know that if people do A, B, and C, they get D. This is not a matter of opinion, because it happens in companies that we've worked with in the UK, in Europe, in the Far East, in Australia, in North America. And we've seen that the faster people adopt the behavior, the more they get the outcome that they want. And it's not like me saying, okay, it worked when I did it, therefore it's true. It worked when Tim did it, and when I did it, and when Thomas did it, and when Lenwood did it, and when Kevin did it, and when Eric did it, and when everybody that's done it has seen the same result when they've done it properly. So we can be fairly confident that this works. It works within companies of 10 people and works within companies of 10,000 people. And so we can be confident about that. And there are lots of people that say, well, I know, and obviously as social sellers, we often rubbish cold calling. But when people say, I know that cold calling is the answer because I phoned on a Friday night, I happened to get through to the chief executive. The chief executive was in a good mood and they said, why don't you pitch me your stuff? Been the best customer we've ever had. Yeah, mate, but that was 15 years ago and it happened once. That's not a repeatable process. And this is the challenge that we're up against. And again, back to that Seth Godin thing that Kevin and Tim pointed me at. This is about saying we're invested in these chips. We have to be prepared to walk away and say the chips actually don't matter anymore. They were fine when I had them. There's no value in them anymore. And the problem is that we're wedded to all of this time that we've spent doing certain things.
So there's a story, just to finish up because we're 5 minutes over. There's a story that there's a Seth Godin has just put a new course up. I think it was free for the first 24 hours. I don't know if it's still free, but he tells a story about it's how'd you catch a monkey? And this is true. What you do is you put a banana in the jar and the monkey puts his hand in and says he's got the monkey and then he won't let go of the banana. And that's what's happened is that with so many people are invested time and effort in the degree that they got 20 years ago, and it's not fit for purpose in 2021 in the digital world.
Have I got time to throw one more thing in there?
Go on, Kevin.
When we're talking about what we're talking about and try to change the methods and the processes that don't work, yada yada, is there a fear attached to the leadership team that we say has control against the departments below them to tell them, oh guys, I'm sorry, but this isn't working. And I know it's attached to revenue and what's right and wrong, but how do you change that full departmental mindset and tell them it's not right anymore because these guys have got it down and you guys are going to have to change. So drop everything. You just talked about learning there and I've done the degree and forget it. How do we turn that screw? It's going to be a slow one, but is that what we're saying essentially?
That's going to take us another hour.
Yeah.
No, I know, but I just wanted to chuck that bomb in there.
It's a long answer, mate.
Yeah. It's a very long answer.
You know what I'm saying, though.
But it's a great
chapter
question.
in my book.
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes.
But this sort of disruptive change has been happening across the organisation. Not, when I started in accountancy, we had a big bit of paper and a machine that put a roll out when we added things up. And now the computer system does it all for us. Disruption happens in organisations. So just because it's happening to sales and marketing doesn't mean it's unique in the way that it needs senior leadership to force change, I think. It's just different. Yeah. That's my opinion anyway.
I don't think it's very different. It's just happening in a different part of the business.
And I agree with Jan, which is that the disruption is moving too fast for some companies. Mm-hmm. They can't keep up. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in, all the discussion. And thank you, Lenwood, Helen, Brandon, Adam, Thomas, and Kevin for all the discussions.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Have a good day. Have a good weekend.